Wes watched his mother as she moved from the window to her closet to look for a pair of shoes to wear with her white dress. She yanked the already stretched telephone cord a few feet farther so that she could keep talking while digging through her closet. Mary was planning on doing what she always did to celebrate, commiserate, blow off steam, or just kill boredom. She and a couple of her friends would head out to the 32nd Street Plaza, a popular nightclub where Mary knew the owner. She was only 27 years old, and despite having two sons, Tony, who was 11, and Wes, she was still young enough to enjoy partying, dancing, and being noticed by men, and noticing them back, much to the chagrin of her family and friends who ended up watching the boys so many nights. She noticed Wes walk back into her room. She sighed and told her sister that she would call her back. Wes, didn't I tell you to go get ready? Wes stood undeterred and again asked her what was wrong. Being the man of the house, he wanted answers, and he wasn't leaving until he got them. Mommy got some bad news about school, and I want to go see some friends and talk about it. Wes gave her an unsatisfied look, as if he knew that the story didn't end there. Finally, she sat him down at the edge of the bed and shared with him, in a language that he could understand, why school was so important. He listened intently as she explained to him the significance of being the first one in the family to go to college. She told him how much it meant to her parents that she finish. Then she explained why she had to quit. Mary and her family had spent the years after the riots in a house on McCullough Street, one of the central arteries in West Baltimore. The home was in a large three-story, five-bedroom row house with a jagged gray brick facade. It sat on a relatively quiet block lined with similarly well-appointed houses, each by trees and grass. But like so much in Baltimore, even this beautiful house was blood-stained. After the riots, Kenneth and Alma, Mary's parents, decided that they wanted to move to a larger home with their ever-expanding family. They'd had 8 children in 11 years. One night, Alma said to Kenneth, "Did you hear about what happened on McClellan Street?" He asked her to explain. "A man killed his wife in her home, chopped her up. She was there for days, and when the cops came looking for him, he decided to try and hide in the chimney. That's where they found him." Kenneth got the point. "I wonder if they're renting it out now." After a bit of inquiry, the landlord placed the home on the rental market with a severe discount to account for the sensational circumstances of the prior tenant's eviction. Kenneth and Alma proudly moved their family into the new home. After their move, Alma's kidneys failed and she began dialysis treatments 3 days a week. The painful and tiring treatments took their toll on her physically and emotionally. She maintained a cheery outlook, her hair pulled back into a bun that revealed her smooth, dark skin and bright smile. She was always a small woman, but her dialysis was forcing her to lose weight fast, and soon her short, gaunt frame was an almost comical mismatch with her husband's bulk. When Mary told her mother that she was pregnant at age 16, Alma said, "I don't care, you're going to finish school and go to college." Alma had never been to college, the great regret of her life, and like Mary, she became a mother well before she entered her 20s. As tears rolled down Mary's face, her mother told her that she would be there to support her no matter what happened. Always the optimist, Alma kissed her daughter's forehead and gave her a reassuring smile. One morning, soon after Alma got news, it looked like they found the matching kidney that she had been waiting for, praying for. Kenneth was elated. Alma was his heart. He needed her. But Alma seemed disturbed. Alma called her mother before she went to the hospital and for the first time opened up. "I don't trust them, Mommy. They've never really given very good treatment, so I just don't feel like I will get it now." Her mother told her not to worry and launched into a diatribe about the medical technologies of the 70s until Alma interrupted her. "Mommy, I need to know that if something happens to me, you will take care of my babies. I really need to know that." Without hesitation, her mother replied, "You know I will, baby." Alma went to the hospital for the transplant, and the family did its best to maintain their routines. Mary longed for her mom's return. Learning the basics of child rearing is difficult at any time. When you are only 3 years past the state of puberty, the challenge is exceptionally daunting. Tony cried too much. He required so much attention. He was awake when she was trying to sleep, and he slept when she was awake. She could no longer see her friends, and her father wasn't much help. The baby's father was a neighborhood boy who had no interest in helping out with his son. Mary needed her mom back. 3 days later, Kenneth received the news that Alma's body had rejected the new kidney and she had died earlier that morning. Kenneth had to tell his children what had happened. But how do you share something with your kids that you have not fully absorbed yourself yet? Kenneth, usually a gregarious and fun-loving person, also fought the demons of alcoholism. He would spend Thursday through Sunday getting drunk. Then he would spend the rest of the week recovering from a monster hangover, waiting for Thursday to arrive again. He was a weekend alcoholic, in his case, a long weekend alcoholic, who battled over which version of himself he preferred, the drunk one or the sober one. He drank especially heavily when he needed drunk Kenneth to engage in conversations that sober Kenneth wouldn't dare. He took one final swig of rum before calling his kids together. "Sorry, guys, Mom's dead." He finally blurted out, blunt to the point of absurdity. The silence that sat over this room wasn't broken until Mary ran out with Tony, tears streaming down her face. Wheezy went over to hug their father, and the rest of the children simply sat in their places, still not sure if they fully understood what they had just heard, and not knowing how to react. The morning of the funeral, Kenneth did an admirable job of trying to comb the girls' hair. He made sure all of the kids were dressed and ready to go on time, and he cooked breakfast, all jobs normally reserved for Alma. A few pieces of burnt toast later, the family was ready to pay their final respects. Kenneth held everything together until he saw the casket at the altar. It was the first time he had seen his wife's body since he viewed her at the morgue. Something had changed, but not what he had expected. Now she looked more like Alma. The makeup made her cheeks rosier, her skin more even, more alive. It looked almost as if she was flashing her trademark smile as she lay in the brilliantly polished wooden casket. When he saw his partner of 16 years stretched out in the coffin, Kenneth's eyes welled up. All of his strength evaporated. The weight that sat on his shoulders, the burden of losing his partner and raising this family without her, became unbearable. He wept, choking for air. He reached into the casket and grabbed her shoulders. He yanked Alma up and, supporting her head with one arm, tried to pull her body out of the casket. Some of the other mourners ran over to him, trying to loosen his grip from his wife's lifeless body. After a struggle, Kenneth was pulled from his wife's small frame, and she was laid back down in her casket. He screamed as he was escorted out of the church. The congregation began to sing Blessed Assurance. Alma's parents soon moved into the home Alma and Kenneth shared, and they didn't leave until the last child was out of the house. Mary was the first of the kids to leave the house. Education was her escape in more ways than one. After listening to his mother describe her letter, Wes quickly volunteered to get a job and help out. Mary laughed. "You can work later and make money. Right now I just need you to go get your bag so I can drop you off." Wes, finally satisfied, moved from his mother's bed so that he could put the last of his toys in his backpack. Mary watched as he walked out of her room. Tall for his age, he was over 4 feet tall at 6 years old and muscularly defined. He looked amazingly like his father. They were the same shade of dark brown and even wore the same short, even haircut. Like his father's, Wes's grin stretched across his entire face and had a way of putting everyone at ease. Where they differed was in personality. Wes carried himself with a reserved, quiet dignity, while his father was always loud and rude. At least he was like that when he was drinking, which seemed to be all of the time. Mary met Bernard, Wes's father, at her job after she showed up to visit one of her coworkers at Bayview. Bernard was struck by Mary's figure. She had that new mother thickness and still young enough to flaunt it confidence. Her smoky voice and welcoming smile all enticed Bernard. Within minutes of meeting her, he asked her if she would see him again. She agreed. It turned out that for most of their lives they lived only a few blocks apart. Bernard's parents lived on McMahon Street, which ran adjacent to McCullough. A few months later, Mary was pregnant with her second child, and in 1975, Wes came into the world. But the relationship between Mary and Bernard didn't make it to their child's birth. Since leaving high school years prior, Bernard hadn't found a steady job. He spent most of his time searching for himself at the bottom of liquor bottles. Mary was left with 2 alcoholic, abusive men who shared the DNA of her 2 children, but no husband or dad for her boys. Once, Bernard tried to be involved in his child's life. About 8 months after Wes's birth, Mary was awakened by a loud banging on the front door of the home that she shared with her sister on Pennsylvania Avenue. "Mary, what the hell is going on?" her sister asked. "It's Bernard's crazy ass out there. I ain't gonna talk to him. He's drunk and crazy." Bernard continued to bang and scream. He stood on the other side of the door in faded jeans and a plain white t-shirt, his beard scruffy, his eyes bloodshot. He was slurring out demands to see his son. Mary simply sat on her bed, peeking through the blinds at the father of her younger child. All the noise woke Tony up, but when he arrived at Mary's bedroom door asking what was going on, she snapped her fingers and hushed him, telling him to go back to bed. Wes, not even a year old yet, slept on peacefully. Bernard kept up his racket for another 20 minutes, while Mary just peered out at him, disgusted. Finally, admitting defeat, he stumbled back home, and that was the last time he tried to see his son. Wes waited downstairs for his mother to take him to his grandmother's house. It was already late, almost 6 in the evening, so he wondered how long he would have to stay there. Mammy, Wes's grandmother, liked Mary, but she loved her grandson. Wes always felt true love when he went to her house. Despite the fact that her son had nothing to do with Wes, Mammy didn't want Wes punished for the circumstances through which he was brought into the world. Wes sat in the front seat of the car for the short drive to Mammy's. Mary ran down the rules of the house as she did every time Wes visited. No running indoors, no talking back, don't eat too much. Wes nodded at each commandment. Minutes later, they arrived at McHennon Street. Uh, Wes ran up the 3 white marble stairs that led to the front door. He got on his toes and reached up to push the doorbell. Mammy's scintillating eyes met Wes's as she opened the door in her arms for a big hug. Wes loved the house. It was large, 3 stories, which gave him plenty of things to get into and out of. He sprinted inside of the house and made a beeline for the kitchen. The smell of fried chicken cooking and the excitement of playing with the pet rabbit under the sink increased his pace. He was running through the living room when he saw someone he had never seen before. A man sat on the couch leaning precariously to the side, his right elbow supporting his body and his head nearly flat against his shoulder. The strong smell of whiskey wafted through his clothes and his pores. Wes and the man returned to each other's quizzical looks. Mary entered the room and stopped in her tracks. She would have recognized that hangover lean anywhere. The man looked through his partially opened eyes and saw Mary. A wide smile appeared on his face. "Hey, Mary. Damn, you look good," he said, loudly announced. "Hey," she responded, her voice as emotionless as she could make it. Wes looked at his mother, hoping that she would explain who this man was. He moved closer to his mother's hip. Not only did he feel safer there than in the middle of the room, but also because the smell coming off of the man was beginning to bother him. The man on the couch looked up at Mary and asked, "Who's this?" Mary smirked and rolled her eyes. She could not believe his audacity. Wes didn't understand why, but he felt the tension in the room. Mary looked down at her son and uttered the words she had never said before and never thought she would have to say. "Wes, meet your father."